Hello everyone and welcome back to Fly From Home. Catman here with another Microsoft Flight Simulator product review. And this is going to be a big one, I think. So what we have here is something that's going to be quite special for any fans of GA aircraft in flight simulators in general, not just in Microsoft Flight Simulator. So, as you might imagine, I'm going to be going all out on this one, and we're going to be doing a full in-depth product review. Now, as you might have imagined by looking at the length of the video, it's quite a long one, and there's a lot to it. So there are timestamps below in the description for you to skip through to the parts that you are interested in. So I've warned you, you're in for a long ride, I'm afraid. Anyway, for those of you who are in for the long ride, what do we have here? Well, first of all, I feel obliged to talk a little bit about the developer. So A2A Simulations are a group of guys who started out developing aircraft for P3D originally. I think they originally started out developing their own standalone simulators. I think they made a game called Battle of Britain, but don't quote me on that one. I'm a little bit hazy on my video game history. But they started developing aircraft for P3D, and their aim when developing aircraft for P3D was to leave behind that simulator's quite simplistic aerodynamics system and develop their own standalone aerodynamics to make the most accurate handling aircraft you could possibly imagine in terms of GA at least. They also set out to create an accurate simulation of what it's like to operate one of these aircraft in real life in terms of maintenance, wear, failures, all these kind of things that you have to consider as a GA pilot. So when these guys came forward and said they were going to develop their Comanche add-on, which was already out in P3D, for Microsoft Flight Simulator, not long after Microsoft Flight Simulator launched in 2020, there was a lot of hype and a lot of excitement. And they stated that they were developing it and then kind of went dark for about 3 years. And a lot of people kind of got hyped up when they heard the news that this thing was coming, and then with everything going kind of silent running and dark, or whatever phrase you want to use, there was a lot of rumours going around that it was just kind of vaporware, or that there was no way they could get their aerodynamic system to work within the constraints of Microsoft Flight Simulator. There was all sorts of doom and gloom and all sorts of things, and to be fair, I was kind of drawn into that as well. There were some comments in some of my videos, or some of our videos on this channel, talking about how this aeroplane's kind of non-existent and is just the no man's sky of a flight simulation. But just like No Man's Sky, this aeroplane has eventually come good. So presumably they had some kind of breakthrough, or they were just working diligently, quietly behind the scenes and not posting updates because they didn't want people to start expecting developments and expecting the aircraft by a certain date and all these kind of things. They didn't want to be pressured by the customers and the fans and all the rest of it. And they've just been working behind the scenes. And a few months ago, they just came out and said, yeah, it's in beta testing, it's coming soon. And lo and behold, here it is. So they've made a fantastic comeback, just like my beloved McLaren Formula 1 team have at the moment. They've come back from pretty much nowhere, and they've delivered what they were promising to deliver. Or have they? That's what we're here to find out. Now, I'm going to shut up about the developers, and we're going to start having a little talk about the real aircraft. But before I do that, I'm going to talk a little bit about my history with this aircraft. So I am a commercial flying instructor. My full-time career at the moment, anyway, is that I teach multi-engine and single-engine commercial flight training, and also instrument raising training in the UK, as you might imagine by my beautiful accent. Now, I mostly fly PA-28s, Arrows, and the DA-42 twin-engine aircraft. However, back in the Stone Age, when I was doing my own commercial flight training, this was the aeroplane that I did all of that training on. So I completed my commercial pilot's license, and I also completed my single-engine instrument rating on a PA-24-250 Comanche, which looked almost identical to the thing you can see spinning around on the screen right now. Now, I did in total about 50 hours, probably a bit more. Yeah, no, about 50 hours, I think, if I look back at my logbook, I'll put something on the screen, in this aircraft, which is quite a lot, really. But it was over 10 years ago now. So my memories of this aircraft are a bit hazy. They're very, very fond memories. I loved flying this aeroplane, and I wish I got to fly it a little bit more than I did, but they're quite rare in the UK for reasons that I'll kind of touch on a little bit later. But I do have some experience with this aircraft, but it is in the far past, so please forgive me if some of the things I'm saying are maybe not quite accurate, because I'm kind of drawing on some perhaps long forgotten memory. So this segment of the video, I always talk about the history of the actual aircraft itself. Now, thankfully to all of us nerds who are interested in the history of the aeroplane, there is some fantastic documentation that's been put out by A2A about the Comanche. So really, I'm just going to be drawing on this and completely copying it all. But, you know, it's an interesting read, and I guess hearing it read by my beautiful dulcet tones is worth hearing for those of you who are fans of the channel. So I'm going to do it anyway. So the PA-24 is basically a product of the American GA aviation industry post-World War II. So there was this kind of expectation that following the Second World War, all of the thousands of airmen trained by the US military for the war in the Europe and the Pacific would come back and want to carry on their love of passion of aviation by buying their own aircraft and ferrying their friends and family around and all that kind of thing, and continuing to enjoy the passion of flight. And as a result, there was an expectation that the GA market would really grow up and expand. And one company was in a great position to take advantage of this. And that wasn't Piper, believe it or not. That was, in fact, Beechcraft. Now, this is an aircraft that I've already done a video on. In fact, it may even be down the side of your YouTube window as we speak. It's the Beechcraft Bonanza was really the first aircraft that came out to take advantage of this expectation in the GA market. And the Bonanza really blew the competition away completely. It was a much more advanced design. It had loads of really, for the time, very, very high-tech features which we were only really seeing on military aircraft back in the late 1940s. So the Bonanza kind of cornered the market of high-performance executive aircraft. But the Bonanza had some shortcomings. It paid for its fantastic performance and great efficiency with quite a tricky-to-fly aircraft that would like to spin and stall in violent ways occasionally. Its low-speed handling was not the easiest. Now, Beechcraft, when they were developing the Bonanza, had the expectation that most of the people flying these airplanes would be former Mustang pilots and B-17 pilots and so on and so forth, who are used to dogfighting BF-109s in aircraft with holes through the wings and all these kind of things. So they thought the characteristics of the Bonanza really wouldn't be that much of an issue to a professional, highly experienced aviator. What actually happened is that Bonanzas were being bought up by low-hour, wealthy individuals who saw the aircraft as something like a luxury car. They just looked at a shiny, fancy aeroplane that looked really cool and thought, yeah, I'm going to buy one of those, and subsequently gave it none of the respect that it deserved. So, enter William T. Piper. So William T. Piper was a chap who obviously invented the Piper Aircraft Company, or founded the Piper Aircraft Company, should I say. Now, this guy was basically the Henry Ford of aircraft manufacturing, or GA aircraft manufacturing, in the late 40s, early 50s. And he had a vision to create a executive aircraft which would be accessible to everyone. And that is where the inception of the Comanche came from. He was aiming firmly at the Bonanza. And to do that, he resolved to create an aircraft which would be not only the match of the Bonanza in terms of its main selling point, its high cruise speed, but it would exceed the Bonanza in the areas that the Bonanza wasn't so great in, like the handling characteristics, but also like things like the load carrying capacity and the narrow center of gravity window that the Bonanza used to have. So to do that, William T. Piper and his son, who was his partner in business, turned to the Mooney Aircraft Corporation. So Mooney had come up with an aircraft called the M20, Now, the M20 was a fantastic little aircraft and featured a lot of the attributes that the Piper company wanted to include on their aircraft. So they kind of went out of their way to push the Mooney guys to sell some of the design to them. Now, there's a bit of a mix-up, and nobody really knows how Piper ended up with information about the M20. Some people say they fortuitously had one parked in a hangar at Piper's HQ for one night, and they just went out there and had a really good look around it. Presumably pulled some of the wing panels off and had a look at the structure or what have you, and in the ultimate act of industrial espionage, basically stole the design. Other people will tell you that it was a mutual agreement, that Mooney worked for Piper in drawing up the rough idea of this design and then sold it to them. I don't know. I've got no idea. I'm basically just reading this off the information that A2A provided. So I've got no horse in the race. Maybe it's up to you to form your own opinions on that one as to which story you think is true. I lean towards the less dramatic version. But anyway, the aircraft borrowed a lot from the Mooney M20, and that's not a bad thing because the M20 was a fantastic little aeroplane. Now, the chief thing that made the Comanche such a fantastic design and such a standout design in comparison to the Bonanza was its wing. Now, the Bonanza used the same aerofoil, basic aerofoil shape as the Corsair fighter. Now, the Corsair fighter was obviously very, very good at going very, very fast, but it also had some pretty mean low-speed handling characteristics, which is exactly what the Bonanza, the sort of attributes the Bonanza displayed. The Comanche shared its wing design with none other than the P-51 Mustang, which was the first aircraft really to be designed completely by mathematics, not by a guy sitting there and drawing fancy pictures and sort of dreaming up an aircraft shape, as we all like to think that R.J. Mitchell designed the Spitfire just by sitting there and watching birds flying around. The Mustang was designed purely by cold, hard nerd power, and they came up with something called the laminar flow aerofoil. And the laminar flow aerofoil essentially works by keeping a smooth boundary layer around the wing, a boundary layer of air around the wing to a much further aft point than a conventional wing design. And as a result, it makes the wing far more efficient. So efficient that it can be made much longer than an equivalent conventional wing while retaining a similar sort of drag factor. So although the Bonanza's wing is much smaller, it actually produces about the same drag as the much longer wing on the Comanche. And the advantage of a much longer wing, a much greater wing area, is that you have a much lower wing loading. And a lower wing loading brings with it all of the nice, friendly, gentle handling characteristics that you would want in a GA aeroplane. So that's really the masterwork of the Comanche. It's got this fantastic high aspect ratio wing, which is really, really ahead of its time. And almost you can kind of look at it and think, yeah, it looks a bit P-51-y, doesn't it? And that's because it is. So you've got this fantastic laminar flow wing, which gives you not only the performance, but it also gives you the handling characteristics. And because it's also positioned much further back on the airframe than the Bonanza's wing, it also gives you a much more forgiving center of gravity window, so it allows you to load the aircraft with bags and all sorts of things in much more creative ways than you could a Bonanza and be miles away from the critical center of gravity forward or aft limits. A lot of accidents, because the Bonanza did have quite a lot of accidents, especially in the early years, a lot of accidents were caused by people loading the aircraft incorrectly and exceeding the forward or aft center. I think it was probably more the aft center of gravity limits of the aircraft, which resulted in the stall characteristics of the aircraft being accentuated even further than they already were. With the Comanche, that's much harder to do, and it also allows you to just load more weight into the aircraft. Now, the first versions of the Comanche, I believe 1956 was the first year that the aircraft started to be tested, and it was originally tested with a 180 horsepower engine, which wasn't all that special and wasn't really able to get the aircraft anywhere close to the Bonanza's cruise speed. The 250 version, which is what A2A have created here, which is the exact version that I flew on my CPL and IR, swapped out the 4-cylinder 180 horsepower engine for a 6-cylinder 250 horsepower Lycoming engine. And that's really where the magic started to happen, because finally you had enough horsepower to really take the fight to the Bonanza and all the other small executive aircraft that were knocking about at that stage in the mid-50s. So really you had fantastic airfoil, you had fantastic handling capabilities, you had a very friendly, easy to fly aircraft. Where did it all go wrong? Why aren't we seeing these airplanes still in production today, like, for example, the Arrow is, or like the Bonanza is, for example, which by all intents and purposes should be the inferior design? It all goes back to 1972, when Hurricane Agnes caused an enormous flood of the production facilities that Piper had in Lock Haven in Pennsylvania. So the production line at which the Comanche was built, along with the Piper Apache, which is the twin-engined, original twin-engine Piper, and also the Piper Twin Comanche, because there was a twin-engine version of this, were just completely destroyed by the flood. The airframes were destroyed, but also the production line machines themselves were destroyed. The dies for stamping the parts were all destroyed. It was an unbelievable amount of destruction with this flood. And essentially the Comanche was just wiped out of existence. And the Piper Aircraft Company, faced with this enormous bill to try to repair everything and get it running again, simply thought, nah, we give up. And they already had another production facility at Vera Beach in Florida, and they thought, well, we've got one factory, it's building PA-28s, Arrows, Warriors, we're just going to stick to that. And that really is why the Comanche died. It wasn't killed off by being unsuccessful or unpopular or anything like that. It was killed off by an act of God, essentially, which is quite sad because, as I said, this is a really, really fantastic aeroplane. There are plenty of things about it that I would change if I was making it now, but certainly in terms of its aerodynamics and its basic structure, it is an unbelievable aircraft. And it's also, in my opinion, one of the prettiest single-engine light aircraft that have ever been built. I think it's a stunning looking little aeroplane. It's incredibly capable. As I said, it's got the handling capabilities, it's got the performance, but it's also got big chunky landing gear, which means it's great at landing on grass. It's got great fuel capacity. It's very reliable and sturdy, and with the advent of modern avionics, it can be fitted out to be the perfect IFR aircraft. It's just a really, really good all-rounder. Now, perhaps this particular version is not the ultimate Comanche, and I'll touch on that a little bit later on. But still, in today's environment, this is still a fantastic aeroplane to fly, and sadly, us in the UK, we don't really have too many of these. Not many of them made their way over throughout the sort of 50s, 60s and 70s when these aircraft were in production. Most of them, you guys have them over in the US, so I'm very jealous of all your Comanches in the US. Now, a couple of cool little features that the Comanche introduced, as well as all the clever aerodynamics and stuff like that, was something that became quite typical for Pipers throughout production, really, up to the present day. And one of those things is the all-moving stabilator with the anti-balance trim tab on the trailing edge. That's something that all the PA-28 model aircraft have. Going up to the Seminole as well, which is obviously just a twin-engine PA-28. They all have that feature. So that's something that's been carried on throughout the Piper DNA. The other thing is the tail. So the Comanche came out in the sort of early jet era when the first sort of jet fighters were getting going. And jet fighters, of course, have these really cool raked back tails, and it's all to do with reducing drag at really high speeds and things like that. Now, does a light aircraft need a raked back angular tail? No. But it looks really cool. So, really, Piper were the first guys to stick one of these on a mass-manufactured aircraft, and it set the trend for light aircraft ever since. Cessna changed the 150 and the 152 to have raked-back tails, and all of their 172 models and all the rest of it all have raked-back tails these days. Everything, even the Diamond DA-42 that I fly, very advanced aircraft aerodynamically, has a raked back tail. Not because it's particularly advanced, you know, it's helping the aerodynamics all that much. It's mostly just to look cool. So we have the Comanche to thank for that one. So that's the story of this this little aeroplane. I guess I should probably talk about this particular representation of it in the simulator. We're going to have a look, first of all, at the exterior model. Now, we're very, very spoiled in the world of Microsoft Flight Simulator. We've had some unbelievably good-looking aeroplanes throughout the past 3 years or so that this simulator's been out. And this is just the latest in a long line, really. I would put it right up there with the best of them in terms of its visual model. Is it the #1 greatest external model ever? I mean, if you get your microscope out or your drone camera and you zoom right into every single piece of this aeroplane, it might not quite hold up to some certain aeroplanes which I would sort of say are the absolute gold standard of exterior models. But it's right up there. It does look fantastic. Now, you can probably tell by my spinning here, which I'm trying to do slowly so not to give you all nausea, that the aircraft is nicely weathered. So they were really going for a look of an aircraft which is kept outside and has done a few thousand hours, and you know, isn't polished every other day and kept in a hangar, which is probably how the vast majority of Comanches look. Certainly the one that I used to fly was kept outside, and it had slightly faded white and green paint. And it still looked unbelievably cool, even with the slightly tatty paint job. But I have seen examples of this aircraft that are sort of hangar queens, and they look gorgeous with just a nice pin-sharp, glossy paint job. And I'm sure good old Flight Sim TO has got plenty of those types of colour scheme waiting to go and easily installed in your community folder if you should want a colour scheme like that. But all of the colour schemes included with the aircraft are this kind of weathered look, and I'm not complaining about that. I think the weathered look really suits the aircraft. I'm going to have a quick look at the different liveries on display. You have 5 of them. So they've all modelled after a specific aeroplane. They're all November registered aircraft, so again, US bros, you're winning. This is a slightly more modern looking colour scheme. You can see these little bits of weathering carry over to all the different colour schemes here. So they all have this slightly sort of weathered look. I like this one. This one looks quite cool. Bit of gold reflective paint running down there. Very nice. November 7791 Papa. Nice white and blue. This one's got maybe a little bit more glossiness to the paint. Very pretty. You know, I'm always a fan of blue and white colour schemes. Not quite decided which one I'm going to use for the flying part of the video. So, oh, I think this one's actually my favourite. This is very cool, especially with the orange tip tanks. 84 Victor Kilo. I've actually seen an aircraft, a Comanche, in this exact colour scheme in my travels around the UK, and I thought, oh, good God, does that look good. There we go. Beautiful. I think that's probably the one I'm going to go with for the video. And the final one here. 822 Juliet Hotel. This is a lovely colour scheme as well. It's very retro looking though. Okay, cool. So that's the exterior model. It's extremely good. It's, like I said, perhaps not the absolute greatest exterior model in the history of Microsoft Flight Simulator, but it's certainly up there. And comparing it to external models from other simulators, there is absolutely no comparison that this is definitely the best looking exterior model that A2A have ever put out. It's certainly up there with the likes of the Just Flight Arrow, for example, which I suppose prior to this aircraft you would say is the highest, most study-level single-engine aircraft in the simulator, alongside the Black Square Bonanza. So Bonanza versus Comanche is continuing long past the original fight. Right, let's have a look what it looks like inside. Now, the interiors of these aircraft, all the panel colours and things like that, change per colour schemes as well. So this is the panel for this aircraft. You see the badge on the yoke there. And if we go back to this colour scheme here, we'll see that now we've got a turquoise panel. Kind of looks like a Russian fighter jet. So yeah, so the interiors, the seats, all these kind of things, all change when you change the livery, which is really very, very cool indeed. Now, looking at the internal parts of the aircraft, the cockpit, you can see that the quality in here is extremely good. You can see the stitching on the headliner, you can see the grain in the leather, stitching on the seat. Lovely bit of reflective bits on these very fetching green vinyl seats. Yeah, maybe not to my cup of tea. A little bit of wear on the headrest. Sorry, though. Fantastic control lock. Look at this super high-tech piece of equipment. So yeah, the panel is really gorgeous, and again, it's up there. You can see them, yeah, just having a little jiggle there. So yes, the panel is well up there with the absolute best in Microsoft Flight Simulator. It's going along with the slightly weathered theme that runs through all of these aircraft. So it's not looking like a brand new aeroplane, because that's not the goal of what the visual model was supposed to do. In terms of your instrumentation, there are options. So mostly to do with this radio stack here. So this is the traditional old school radio stack, but you can swap this out for 430s, 530s, and of course the ubiquitous now PMS50 Garmin 750 add-on, which is one of my favourite things to put in an aeroplane. In terms of your main instrumentation, though, it's all old school analog, so fans of steam gauges, or analog gauges as some people prefer, rejoice, because this is what you've got in this aeroplane. No doubt at some point, or I suspect at some point in the future, there may be some kind of change to add maybe some flat panels to here for people who want that kind of thing. Maybe if A2A feel like expanding this aeroplane a little bit, they might bring that as an upgrade in the future. But for now, we've got the analog stuff, and I think it really suits the character of this aeroplane, so I'm not upset with that at all. The layout of this cockpit, you may, when you get in here, it kind of shows the age of the aircraft a little bit. Outside it looks very cool and just as modern as any single-engine complex aeroplane with retractable landing gear or anything like that, but on the inside it does look quite 1950s, and the layout of the cockpit is quite strange, with this kind of central panel with everything all mounted in the middle here, and the radios over to the side here. Most of the time you're used to having that sort of stuff in the middle. Indeed, the aircraft that I flew had the entire panel redone and had a glass PFD over here, and most of the radios in the traditional position in the middle. So I'm not going to say that every single Comanche is laid out like this, but the original Comanche layout is this. So that's what we've got in the simulator. I think it looks absolutely fantastic. So in terms of the exterior model and the interior model, it's absolutely up there with the best in Microsoft Flight Simulator. So that's enough of me waffling on about this aeroplane in the hangar. I think we should probably jump into the simulator and go flying. What do you think? Okay, so here we are in the simulator at the now dearly departed Doncaster Sheffield Airport. Now, for those of you not familiar with the channel, we always do this as a standardised flight. So we start off at Doncaster and we fly down to Nottingham, which is a flight of about 40 miles, if I remember rightly off the top of my head. The weather conditions are completely ISA standard. That is to say the outside air temperature is 15 degrees, there is no wind, the outside air pressure is 1013 hectopascals, 2 inches of mercury if you are from the States. So everything's all standardized, and that is so we can get a good read on the aircraft's climb performance and measure it up to the book figures. Now, a little word on those book figures. Normally I have to search around on the internet for a PDF of the original documents. Thankfully, A2A have included all of the relevant performance documents, including things like takeoff performance, takeoff distance, climb performance, cruise performance, and also a power settings table in the aircraft manual, which is absolutely spot on, very helpful as far as I'm concerned. So that's made my job significantly easier. So what we're going to be doing is taking off out of here, doing our little flight down to Nottingham, but we'll be doing a detour en route to do some general handling, as well as obviously checking those performance figures. We'll also be looking around the aircraft systems to see what different things I can demonstrate. We'll also be looking at stalls, steep turns, and all those sort of usual general handling maneuvers. Then what I'll probably do is I'll actually put a little bit of weather into the simulator for our circuit detail at Nottingham. We're going to fly 3 circuits, full flap, flapless, and a glide approach to land the aircraft and then we'll pull in and we'll have our little conclusion. But before we start off with all that, I'm going to try to give you the full rundown of all the different things that this aircraft comes with, and this could take a while, so remember there's timestamps below if you want to skip ahead to the flying bit. But for those of you who are interested, then come on board. And the first thing I want to show you is the tablet here. So this thing is far more than just a way to mess around with the weight and balance of the airplane or put a route in or what have you. This thing does loads and loads of stuff, and it's kind of an interface with all of the clever stuff that's going on behind the scenes that makes this airplane work. I've been told by a developer friend of mine that there's some kind of fancy stuff going on in the background outside of the simulator, almost similar to how the first helicopters in Microsoft Flight Simulator, before helicopters were officially implemented, how the first ones were made to work in the sim. The Comanche kind of works in a similar way, I believe. So this is your interface with that clever system. It also tells you whether you need an update. So I was just about to make this video and I loaded in, and the tablet told me that in fact I needed an update, so I had to load all the way back out again and install that. But that's great because it absolves A2A of the responsibility to keep emailing everybody every time an update comes out, and it also reminds people every time they start up the airplane that maybe they should go and pick up the latest version. So very, very helpful. In the next tab we've got a flight info tab. Lots of useful information here. You can see all our weather information, as I said. ISA standard over here, absolutely no wind at all. Then we've got some useful info about the aircraft, all sorts of useful speed and things. I will be using all of these in the flight because I can't remember any of them. Like I said, it was 10 years since I last flew one of these. Checklists, very, very handy to have a checklist over here. Sadly, we don't have a Microsoft Flight Simulator in-game checklist for this aircraft. I can kind of forgive them given how fantastic all of this stuff is, but I do like the in-game checklist because it gives the opportunity to look at whatever item you're selecting. So for example, if I didn't know where the parking brake was, I could click on the little icon to the side of it and it would zoom in to that part of the cockpit and highlight the control. Now it so happens that I'm still familiar enough with the Comanche that I know where most of the stuff is, but if it's your first time in one of these aircraft, or if you don't have any real-world experience, it could be quite confusing trying to find all that stuff when you're still getting used to the aircraft. So maybe a little point of contention there. So yes, so all of your normal checklists are here, and then you have your emergency checklists over here, all the usual stuff, exciting things. And have we got emergency landing gear, etc. May have a little go at this when we're out in flight. I usually have a play around with the emergency extension. Also on this tab we have a cockpit temperature gauge here. We can see the cabin is apparently a little bit cold at 15 degrees. So it's the little mini game with heating the cabin up, isn't it? There's quite a few aircraft in the sim that have that now. Controls. So this at the top you can choose what navigation equipment you have on the airplane. I'll just move this over here so you can see. So at the moment I've got the GTN 750, but there's various different configurations you can have, including the patrician's choice of just a bunch of knackered old radios. I like the 750. It's one of my favourite instruments in this sim. But the working title Garmin 430 and 530 are now very, very capable. So if you'd rather use those, then they are very, very good too. So I'm going to stick with the 750 though. These are all controls for all various bits inside the aircraft, including the pushback, which we're going to have a little go at later. We've also got an engine heater that we can use to heat the oil for very, very cold weather flights. It actually takes a long time to heat up in the order of several hours. However, there's a persistence simulation with this, which means that you turn it on and you go out of the simulator and go and do something else, and then when you load into the simulator your oil is nice and warm because it's remembered that you turned the engine heater on last time. It's very clever. Jacks, so you can jack the aircraft up. Autopilot, so you can control your pilot from here instead of using the little switches on the panel. There's an auto start, there's a cold and dark panel mode. All different realism options here, so gyro drift, so we don't have a slaved HSI in this aircraft. It's an old school DI, although it is it's a HSI, but it's gyro controlled rather than slaved, or rather than independent, sorry, because even a slaved one is gyro driven. But you know what I mean. Cockpit persistence, so this is what I was talking about. It remembers where everything was from flight to flight. Persistence by livery, so that means that depending on what livery you have, it will remember it per livery. So if you ended a flight with everything nicely shut down and the chocks in and things like that with one livery, and with another livery you just sort of shut the engine off and didn't do anything else, it will remember that per livery. So pretty clever. Gyro sounds, just the noise of the gyros. Apparently some people find it annoying, so they give it a control to turn it off. Visible passengers, as the name might suggest. If I put any passengers in here, they'll appear, and I'll show you that in a second. Realistic parking brake means that you have to squeeze the toe brakes and then pull the parking brake on, for example, like this. Otherwise, the parking brake won't work properly. It's a bit like how the 737's parking brake works, for example, or the DA40 and 42s, if you're familiar with that aircraft. But yes, that's how that works. You can turn that off if you just have a single button click that you want to put the parking brake on by. All different volumes there. There's turbulence. You can turn the turbulence down for VR. The turbulence model of this aircraft, so it kind of, the fancy flight model that this aircraft uses talks to the Microsoft Flight Simulator turbulence model, and therefore you can adjust the strength of it through the EFB here. Wear rates, so everything has a wear rate in this aircraft, so engine systems, magnetos, spark plugs, all that kind of stuff, and this is just the rate at which it wears out. I've got it set to normal here. Failure rate, so it's got a dynamic failure system. I've got it turned to normal, so if we do have a failure during the flight, I will have to deal with that, so that'll be interesting. So that's all the options down here. Fuel and payload, as the name suggests, is all your fuel and payload. I've got the aircraft set up to a takeoff weight, or as near as I can get, 2,200 pounds, just because that is one of the figures on the aircraft performance documentation, so it makes it easier for me to reference climb speeds and cruise speeds and things, well, climb speed specifically. So that's why I've done that. You can see that the aircraft's got 4 fuel tanks in total, 2 main fuel tanks and 2 tip tanks, and the 2 fuel selectors down here. So unlike the PA-28, the aircraft actually burns from both tanks at the same time, so you don't have to worry about keeping them level, which is really good. Big improvement from the PA-28. And you've got some default loadings here for light, medium, and heavy. And you can click this to update the little digital engine monitor. In fact, I'm going to do that now, because I'm not the greatest at setting this thing up manually, but I'll show you how it works. I'm still getting used to it, really. Right, let's put someone in seat 2, just going to show you what the passengers look like. So you've got this handsome gentleman here, this slightly frightening bloke here, and a lovely lady. And you can also put some baggage in the back, which undoubtedly you can see if you've got the baggage door open, but I can show you that as we do the walk around. Yes, there is a walk around. Maintenance. So this is one of the most interesting aspects of this aeroplane. So before we get onto this, we've got a bunch of different things we can put onto the aircraft. So the Comanche had a bunch of little optional extras that you could spec. First of all, we've got stabilator tips. So you can see it puts these really cool looking sort of forward-facing stings on the tip of the stabilator. Apparently this increases the aircraft's VNE, but there you go. Wing gap seals, so you've got gap seals between the flap and the wing surface, which helps to reduce drag and speed the aeroplane up. All of these have performance effects, by the way, they're not just visual. Wing root fairings, so you can see these nice fairings in between the wing root and the fuselage, again adding a bit of speed to the aircraft. Slipper fairing goes behind the nose gear. One of the few things about the Comanche which is a little bit sort of rough and ready is the fact that there's no door over the nose gear compartment, so it's actually just open to the air. But this little fairing here apparently smooths the airflow around it and helps to reduce the turbulence around that nose wheel aperture. Gear lobe fairings, so these go around the main gear. You see in that, and there, and again they serve the same effect as the slipper fairing. Soundproofing you can't hear, but it's just an extra layer of soundproofing in the cockpit, but it adds a bit of weight to the aircraft. We've got 2 different propeller options. We've got the original Macaulay 3-blade aluminium prop there. or you have the MT propeller, which is a wooden core. It's a modern composite construction propeller with these nice sort of scimitar-shaped curved tips. Very cool looking. What this thing does is reduces weight for a start, but it also helps to absorb a lot of vibration from the airflow from the engine. So it actually has an effect on the aeroplane as well when you do that. But we'll keep it old school, keep the original one on there. You can overhaul the airframe to 0, time everything on the airframe, and you can overhaul all to the engine as well. You've got 3 default states, so you've got a new state, a use state, and an auction state, and that will dictate what sort of condition all of the different aspects of the airplane are in. And you can see that over on the engine side of things by looking at this here and hitting the inspect button. As you can see, everything's nice and green because I went for a new aircraft. But if we go, for example, for an auction aircraft, okay, you'll have to just take my word for it because I don't want to reset everything. But if you hit auction, then everything's going to be sort of in various states of repair, and you'll have to hit inspect and then repair stuff as required. It's almost like a simulation of owning the aircraft, which is something we've not really seen on anything apart from maybe the Blackbird simulations 310, Cessna 310, which tried to go for that kind of effect as well. So very, very cool to see. So it's your kind of aircraft owner simulation rather than just an aircraft pilot simulation. You can see hours on the engine and propeller and all that kind of good stuff. Spark plugs, type of spark plug there. You can clean them off, overhaul the engine, overhaul everything in here. You can even change the grade of oil depending on what sort of temperatures you're going to be operating in. Even very hot temperatures, you can put a thinner oil in there, or very cold, sorry, other way around. Very hot temperatures, you want a thicker oil. Very cold temperatures, you want a thinner oil. You can even put some additive in there. So that's all good. Engine analyzer. So I'll show you this when the engine's running, but this is a live simulation of everything that is going on inside the engine. They have done a per cylinder simulation of the aircraft's engine, magnetos, fuel pumps, carburetor, all that kind of good stuff. So I'll talk you through that when we can actually see it moving, because this diagram does move when the engine fires up. Electrical system, as the name suggests, is just the aircraft electricals. You can control all your circuit breakers over here. Because they are a little bit tricky to get to. They're underneath the instrument panel here, so they're a bit easier in real life because obviously you've got the little labels on here, and you can just kind of run your hand underneath. But it's kind of awkward from your perspective in the simulator, so you can use it from here. And again, you can overhaul everything, and your battery will die and all that kind of good stuff. Okay, so that's that. Now we're on to the walk around. So this part of the review is going to be something that every real-world pilot is familiar with. We call it an A check at our company. It's just the first flight of the day check, and it shows you the route at which you go on this one. So you start out at the door and go round. That's the same as a Piper Arrow or a PA-28. Some aeroplanes you go the other way around. It's a bit weird. So we'll start off here. So we start off with the side fuselage and the flap. So what I'd usually do is give it a little wiggle to make sure it's secure. In fact, normally, I don't know if on the Comanche you do this, but normally what I'd do with an arrow is drop the flaps, there we go, and just give it a wiggle and make sure it's nice and secure. Also, we've got the fuselage side there, but we'll do that when we come back around. But everything looks normal, wing surface looks fine. Coming out to here, we've got the aileron. Now we've got the control lock in still. No, I can't remove it from here, so I'll have to be careful with this. But we just make sure it's secure. There's nothing going around. We have to be quite delicate with the aircraft controls because you don't want to bend or damage anything. But very, very gently. If the control lock wasn't in, which is that very fetching piece of bungee cord around the yokes, what I'd normally do is very gently move it up and down and look through the windows of the aircraft to the other side to make sure that the opposite aileron is doing the opposite thing. Coming around the wingtip, we've got our tip tank. So these things were not fitted to the aircraft that I used to fly, but we'll keep them on our aeroplane today because they look really cool. Let's have a look in the tank. Can't see anything there because they are empty. But if there is fuel inside them, you can see it from here, as we will see when we check the main tanks. You'd also be checking the navigation light on here and make sure it's secure and it's not about to fall off or something like that. I don't know if you've got... Oh, there we go. You can look underneath. We can actually do a sump drain of the... Oh, there's a bit of fuel left in there. Look at that. How's that looking? Yeah. Hang on. Must be some still left in. So yeah, you can see it's blue. Avgas actually has a blue dye added to it. So what I usually recommend people do when they do a sump drain like this is you fill your little jar up or your little fuel tester, have a look at the colour of it against a white part of the airplane. So sort of just hold the tester up against a white bit of paint, and it should show up very clearly blue. And you're looking for any water in the bottom. So I don't know if we've actually got... Is that water in the bottom of there? No, it's just the bottom of the jar. Throw that away. There we go. So that shows you how to do a fuel test. I don't know if I don't know why you're still able to do it with these things empty. Maybe there's just a little bit still left in the system, but that shows you how that works. Very clever indeed. Coming down this side, you've got the landing light. This aircraft's been retrofitted with some rather nice LED landing lights that we'll see when I actually put the lights on. And it's a good opportunity to look down the leading edge as well, looking for any dents or damage. Coming underneath here, we've got the tie down. The tie down's already been taken off, so that's all good. And lower part of the wing is looking very nice. That's fine. Coming around here, we can have a look in our fuel tank. Unscrew it, and we can see our avgas in there. It's kind of hard to tell the level of the tanks just by looking in the top in a Comanche because it has flexible sort of rubber bag fuel cells instead of a hard in-wing, a wet wing as you'd call it, which is a standard sort of in-wing tank on a more modern aircraft. So that's one of the slightly older quirks of the Comanche. Makes it a little bit tricky to determine how much fuel you actually got on board. There we go, and then we can click this again to... I believe do another. Just looking here. Okay, we'll pull the chocks away. I love the sounds. Listen to that sound of pulling those chocks away. It's for anyone who's done that in real life, you'll know exactly what that's like. So that's that one. Coming over here, we've got another fuel drain. So let's see if we've got any water in our fuel. No, it doesn't look like it's looking good. We'll shut that back up like that. Coming around the front, prop looks nice and smooth. No dings or damage or anything like that. Nothing's blocking the air intake or the oil cooler down there. Nose gear is looking good. Coming around here, you can't open up the cowling on the Comanche, much like the Piper Arrow, but you can open this little hatch in the top and check your oil. Our oil's very nice and clean. We can see we've got just under 9 quarts, so that's well within limits there. So let's pop this back down. There we go. Coming over here, we've got another fuel tank. I'm not going to bore you with that one, but obviously in real life we check both sides. We can check the surface of the wing here. And pull this set of chocks away. Okay. Don't know. Pitot cover, get rid of that. Otherwise, we're not going to hear. Well, we're not going to have any dynamic or static indications on our instruments. Coming around this side, we've got a nice landing light. Fuel, but we know that that's empty. Aileron, same story as that side. Give a little wiggle. And you can see I can actually grab hold of these things and wiggle them exactly like I would in real life, which is unbelievable, really, isn't it? Bit of a wiggle on those, still looking nice and secure. Coming around the fuselage size, you're looking for any oil canning effects, so the fuselage skin sort of dented in or anything like that. If you notice any sort of, they can be quite subtle dents, but if you see sort of creases across the airframe like this, it's a good indication that the aircraft, for example, has been tail struck and the whole tail is bent. So that's really what you're looking for here. You're also looking for the condition of things like these aerials up here, and the GPS antenna, and all these little things up there. Coming around the back of the aircraft, you've got the stabilator. So very carefully, give a little wiggle up and down. You can see the anti-balance tab on the trailing edge here should move in the same direction as the stabilator. There we go, and you've got your 2 lights on the end there. Rudder and tails looking fine. We can give it a little wiggle just to make sure it's secure. You've always got to be very gentle with this, but It's always worth a little bit of a move around just to make sure it's not loose. Got the ELT antenna here. Side of the fuselage is looking nice. And we're back around here, and as you can see, it's given us a toolbox and some various bags, so we can pop that open and load any of these things on board. And that will, of course, add it to the weight and balance of the aircraft. But since we're doing science today, I'm afraid all the bags have got to stay at home. There we go, and that's our walk around completed. So, if you're still with me, well done. Thanks for staying awake. But that's a great example of the check that you do before flying the aircraft in real life, and it's just an indication of how in-depth this add-on aircraft is. So I suppose we should go flying, but first of all, we need to push our aircraft back, don't we? So let's pop the parking brake off, hit this here. Now our chocks have been taken away, our parking brake's off. Now what I can do now is I can use my yoke to push the aeroplane. Look at this. And I can give some roll left, roll right inputs to actually steer. There we go. Those of you who don't fly light aircraft will think that's a bit weird, you know, pushing your aeroplane around. It's like, well, yeah, you do it all the time. Light aircraft don't really weigh very much, so it's not a huge chore to just lug them around, and it's a lot easier than starting them up every time you want to move them a little bit. It's just lucky that we've got a little tow bar here, because quite often light aircraft don't come with a tow bar in them, and you have to just shove the propeller and yank and pull the airplane around, which is a bit awkward. Okay, I think that's far enough. Come back inside and we'll pop the parking brake back on here. Right. I guess we should start firing up. So let's go for the checklist. So the pre-flight is complete. We don't have any passengers on board. Seatbelts are secure. Control lock is removed. Parking brake is set. Gear switch. Quite a strange gear switch on this aircraft because it's just a little toggle down there. It's not like a big traditional gear lever that you'd usually have. But yes, the gear switch is down there. Flaps can come up now in stages. So normally you'd look each side and make sure that they are coming up a stage at a time, and then they're fully retracted. Radios are all off, avionics switches off, electrical switches are all in the off position, circuit breakers are all in, nothing popped there, and I'll just look down here and I'll just show you that's what they look like when they're popped out. They've got like a grey band on them that makes it obvious that they've popped. Rotating beacon goes on. Fuel selector goes to desired tank, and we make sure that they're on mains because our tip tanks are empty. Your tip tank fuel level, by the way, is this little gauge down here, and you flick this toggle to go from left to right. Mixture goes rich. Throttle is cracked open. Prop is full forward, which it is. Carb heat is off. It is. Master switch can come on. Go. That wonderful grinding noise, by the way, is the rotating beacon, which is an actual rotating light, like an old cop car light on top of the aeroplane, which is just one of the most brilliant things I've ever seen in my life, really. So that's that. Master switch is, where was I? Fuel pump. So fuel pump goes on, and we should build fuel pressure. Give it a second. There we go. We're up into the green with the fuel pressure. Fuel pump goes off now. Primer. So that's not the primer. That's the primer. Give it 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll give it 4 primes today and close it off there. Give it a clear prop out the door. In fact, we'll shut the door now. Go. I'll open the little storm window though so you can hear aeroplane noises. There we go. Right, mags to both. Check we're all clear outside. And then we hit the starter button. Just a quick note about the starting of this aeroplane. It's different every single time you start it and depends on outside air temperature and whether the engine's just been running and all sorts of stuff like that. So, unbelievable level of detail. But we'll see what kind of mood the aeroplane's in today. not a bad mood by the looks of things. There we go. So oil pressure's in the green, the starter warning is out, and RPM is 1000. We're immediately going to pull a bit of mixture out to prevent the spark plugs from fouling, because that's one of the really endemic problems with this aircraft. I'm going to pop the storm window back closed again. I love the fact that they've recorded the sound of a storm window opening and closing, so it's absolutely perfectly spot on. Very pedantic there, but very cool. Okay, so that's that done. Let's go for the before taxi checklist. The primer is locked. The avionics master can now come on. Ammeter is charging. And we've got gyro suction as well. Radios are all on. I've not really set them up, but I guess we can do something. I'm not going to bother with comm radios. Maybe we'll want 1139 for Otteringham. Probably the most sensible thing to have on there, and then maybe 11574 for Trent VOR, two closest nav aids. We can also potentially set the ADF up over here. So we got 338, which should be Foxtrot November Yankee. Let's see if that's actually going to point at it. Maybe. Maybe it's over there. Hang on. Let's see. We've got an ADF mode. No. Okay. Well, maybe it's working, maybe it ain't. Not sure. Compass card here. This is just a relative bearing indicator, so it's a pretty basic instrument. We're not going to be doing any radio nav anyway, so I don't really need any of that stuff, but the aircraft is perfectly IFR capable as long as you're familiar with how to use traditional instrumentation. Transponder is required, so we will go standby and 7,000. 7,000. Okay. Altimeters, I'm just going to hit B. There we go. Heading indicator. So, as I mentioned earlier, this isn't a slaved instrument, so you need to line it up with your whiskey compass up here. So we've got 340 degrees on there. So let's have 340 degrees on here. Landing gear lamp green, so that's just your gear indicator, so it should be down and locked, which it is. Just make sure that the panel lights aren't on. There we go. You'll see that if you turn the panel lights on, it goes dim because it presumes that it's dark in the cockpit and you don't want the indicator lights to be too bright, but it's also a great way to fool you into thinking you've had a gear failure. So make sure that is the panel lights are off there. The bright green light there is what you're looking for. It's all you've got in terms of your gear indication, by the way. So instead of having one for each gear, you only get one for all three. So one of the slight shortcomings of the Comanche. Nav lights is required. So the nav lights are actually tied to the interior light switch here. So if you want your nav lights on, then you lose your gear light. But well, I mean, technically speaking, I should have my nav lights on all the time. So let's keep it on and let's deal with the dim light on the parking brake, release, and brakes finish roll test. So that's all good. Let's put this down on the seat here and let's go for it. So we don't need to refuel on that. And we've got our little engine monitor over here. This is a really great bit of kit. The aeroplane I used to fly had something fairly similar on there. It's very useful to monitor this type of engine. So here we go. Idle brake, release parking brake, and away we go. So, quick little note on the engine in this aircraft. It's a 6-cylinder, normally aspirated, carburetted 250 horsepower engine. it is a great engine, but it does require a bit of babying. You need to really look after it on the ground to stop the spark plugs from fouling up, and because it's a relatively large engine and it flows a large volume of fuel and air through the carburetor, it's prone to icing. So you're going to be getting a lot of carb ice, even in relatively benign conditions, relatively warm conditions. You've got to be worrying about carb ice, because obviously there's a big drop in temperature through the carb, the venturi. Let's go outside and listen to this. The sounds are absolutely spot on. Not just the engine sounds, but the interior sounds, all the little switches. Even like I showed you, the pulling the chocks away, opening the storm window, things like that. The ground handling of this aircraft, by the way, is absolutely fantastic. It's part of the fancy simulation that A2A have done, is also to sort out the ground handling, which with Microsoft Flight Simulator aircraft can be a little ropey at times. You've probably noticed that the frames that I'm getting are extremely good. I've sorted out my freezing issue that I had on the BF109 video, so everything should be relatively smooth today. And really, I've not noticed any kind of frame drop compared to a default aeroplane with this aircraft, despite all the fancy stuff that's running in the background. So brilliant job on optimizing it. You can hear that they've managed to get the sound of the nose wheel running over the taxiway lights, which is very immersive. Normally you try to avoid them with a light aircraft because they do make quite a bang when you go over them. Shock absorbers on light aircraft are not particularly good. There's not any wind today, so I'm not going to bother angling all the way around. I'm just going to angle slightly off the taxiway centre line. I'm going to set parking brake, reset 1000 RPM, and then go back to our checklist. So we've got the run-up now, positioned into wind, there isn't any, brakes are holding, fuel quantity is checked, we've got loads on board, fuel selectors are set to main, tanks mixture. We're now going to go fully rich and throttle 2000 RPM, so running it up. You can hear things are getting rather loud in the cockpit, so I guess we'll put our headset on. There we go. Right. So, 2000 RPM engine instrumentation is looking good. We've got oil temperature in the green, pressure's good. We've got a good charge from the ammeter, and if you put the pitot heater on for a second, we see it picks up the load and then drops when we turn it back off. So that's all good. Mags, I'm going to check the mags. Maximum 125 RPM drop on each. So we're looking over the RPM gauge up here. There's the left, just over 100. Both. There's the right, just under 100. It's looking okay. Prop, we're going to cycle. So first cycle, we're looking for rise in manifold pressure, drop in RPM. That sound is so good. In fact, I'm going to take the headphones back off again so you can hear that properly. So you may have noticed the manifold pressure went up quite promptly, and it went up by quite a few inches there, about 3 or 4 inches. That's exactly what it's supposed to do. There is no other aircraft in Microsoft Flight Simulator right now that does that properly. So massive props. Props, get it? Massive compliments on getting that right, because it's really annoying that so many aircraft don't do that. The next one, you're looking over the top of the cowling for any oil coming back, and we're good on that. Allow it to recover back to 2000. The final one, we're looking for a fluctuation in oil pressure down on this gauge down here, and we've got it. Now I mentioned the engine visualizing device, so you can see the electrics are going there. You can see the alternator charging. The alternator providing power in there, the battery's fully charged, that's looking really good. We can see our engine here, so you can see that our cylinders are bashing away, mags are spinning, the carb is providing air in there. Now if I start to lean out a little bit, you can see that it goes to sort of more of a green colour, which shows that's a better mixture. for the RPM and temperature that we're running at the moment, so we can lean out a bit. If we needed to clean the spark plugs off, what we'd usually do is run right up and pull the throttle back to pull the mixture back to a sort of over lean, just sort of on the verge of running rough, about there. And that would heat up the cylinders and try to clean the spark plugs up for us. That's a great indication of what's going on inside the engines. If we put the backup fuel pump on, you can see we've got 2 electric fuel pumps here which operate on the one switch. You can see them starting to spin around there as we turn them on. It's just absolutely fantastic. It's even showing us the angle of attack of the prop as well, so if we change that, you can see the angle of attack changing on the prop. It's just beyond anything that I've ever seen in a flight in a flight simulator. To be perfectly honest, it's absolutely fantastic. Anyway, I'm going to stop gushing about that and go back to my checklist. Carb heat. Oh, okay. We'll keep the visualizer on for this. So we're going to put the carb heat on. You can see everything's gone hot now. And we're looking for any icing in there. There's no icing. It will actually show you give you a visualization of what's of ice building up inside your carb there, so you can keep an eye on it. But the main thing would be you open the carb heat and you look for a rise in manifold pressure as you operate the carb heat. But we can see it's actually dropping off a little bit, so that's fine. So carb heat's away. In fact, goes up there. And that's our run-up check complete. So we're going to reduce the power again. Before things get a little bit too hot. You can see cylinder head temperature on number 6 is getting a little bit on the warm side. Go back to 1000 RPM and lean back out again. Okay, before takeoff checklist, controls, free and correct. So let's do our full and free. Left hand down, left side up. Other side opposite, right hand down, right side up, other side opposite, full aft, full forward, and we check the rudder on the taxi out. This doesn't have a semi-castering nose wheel, so you have to check the rudder travel as you're taxiing. Elevator trim, so it's up here, it's the old cowboy rodeo trim, but thankfully you've got an electric switch on your yoke that you'd use 99.9% of the time. So make sure we're on the neutral position up there. Rudder trim I've not touched, so that should still be in the middle. Doors are latched, flaps we don't need for takeoff here. Fuel selectors are both set onto the main tank. The fuel pump can now come on. Mixture can go full rich, but I'm going to do that as I pull onto the runway. Prop is full forward, carb heat is off. Engine gauges are all in the green and looking happy. And that cylinder head temperature's calmed down about a bit now. Pitot heater we're not going to put on yet. Strobes and landing light we're going to do once we pull onto the runway. So without further ado, let's do our final set of checks. So as we climb out, I'm going to try to do our climb performance check. Now we're pretty much sea level here at Doncaster, as I mentioned, where ice is standard as well. So in these conditions, I should be achieving about 1800 feet per minute rate of climb, assuming I'm making VY at 105 miles per hour. Everything in this aircraft's miles per hour, which is a little bit confusing for somebody who's used to knots, but never mind. So assuming I hold 105 nice and accurately, we should initially be getting just over 1800 feet per minute. It should drop off a little bit as we climb, but not too much. Right, let's go mixture full rich now. Start to run the power up. So approach path is clear. Transponder can go to alt reporting. Pitot and all the lights can come on. So we're all good on there. Gonna run the power up some more. T's and P's looking good. We'll give it one last blast of carb heat, make sure we've got no icing. Looks like we're clear. Heels on the floor, brakes off, full power. Airspeed alive. Rotates. Now the Comanche is very light on the yoke actually when you take off. That's a feature from real life and it's very accurate in that sense. And we're climbing away. We're going to pitch for about 10 degrees nose up and touch the brakes, retract the gear, bring the yoke back. And we're looking for 1800 feet a minute, if I can hit this accurately. And that looks to be exactly what we're getting. Just passing 500 feet, I should be reducing to 24 inches of manifold pressure and 2400 RPM, which I am doing while I attempt to fly as well. So yeah, we were definitely getting that 1800 feet a minute with the full power set, and as we reduce to our climb power, it starts to back off a little bit. As with any normally aspirated aircraft, as you climb you have to keep adding a little bit of power to the aircraft. Normally you climb full rich to try to help with the cooling of the engine. I've not set my heading bug because I'm a really rubbish pilot, but I'll do that now. There we go, give me something to aim at. Go up to 4,000 feet because that's one of the altitudes that I have for my cruise performance figures. I hope you've enjoyed the sound of engines, because I'm just going to pop my noise cancelling headset on now, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit more comfortably. There we go. To keep walking the throttle forward to keep it at that 24 inches of manifold pressure. Okay, level off at 4,000. And you'll notice the Comanche's got quite a hefty nose-down attitude at high cruise speed. That's by design, to give you a nice view over the nose. The arrow is exactly the same. It's a great feature, actually. Unlike a Cessna, which flies pretty nose high, the Comanche and the Arrow fly pretty much bang on the 0 degrees, so the 0 deck angle in a fast cruise, which is just what you want, really. A note about the trim on this aeroplane: it's brilliant, it's really good, and it's adjustable as well via the tablet, so you can actually change the trim speed if you want. But I think the default is spot on for what I want. It works really, really well with the switches on my honeycomb yoke. Okay, so according to the power setting table for this altitude, the optimum is 2400 RPM and 23.6 inches manifold pressure, so I'm just going to tweak the manifold pressure back very, very, very slightly. And I'm also going to lean for best horsepower. And also to keep our spark plugs clean. Quick blast carb heat, make sure got no icing, nothing seen. Okay, so according to my graph, we should be getting at 4,000 feet about 176 knots TAS. Sorry, 176 miles an hour TAS. Now, I don't have a TAS indication on this airplane. I have an indicator, and that's giving me about 176, but obviously at 4,000 feet TAS is a little bit more than indicated. Now we've got 156 nautical miles per hour, and if you give me a second, yeah, so that's about 179 knots. I definitely did that all in my head without having to resort to a converter app on my phone. So within 3 or 4 knots maybe of the book figure, and that's accounting for this bit of turbulence we're getting from the flying over the terrain, and also my ropey flying. So yeah, as far as I'm concerned, spot on in both the cruise and climb performance for these weather conditions and this weight. So that's our performance figures done. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to crack on with some general handling. So I'm going to slow the aircraft down a bit now. I'm going to go for about 21 inches, I guess, and about 2300 RPM. Which should give us a slightly slower cruise speed. Looking for in the region of 120 knots. Now, one thing you'll notice about the Comanche is that it's actually a really slippy aeroplane, and that's a function of that beautiful laminar flow wing that it has. So unlike the Arrow, which is kind of a bit of a brick and doesn't really slow down, or slows down very quickly, sorry, the Comanche is actually quite tricky to slow down, which is quite similar to the other aeroplane that I fly in my day job, the DA-42, which is an aeroplane from about 50 years after the Comanche, so it just shows how good the Comanche was, really ahead of its time. And that's taking a very long time to slow down, isn't it? Give it a blast of carpy, make sure that we're not icing up. Oop. Let's keep an eye on the engine analyzer. Do we need a bit more leaning, maybe? Maybe we do. One thing I can show you actually while we're waiting for the airplane to slow down is the lean find. So if we hit this button on the engine analyzer here and slowly lean out, then what will happen is that it will find the hottest cylinder and tell you which one it is, and then give you a indication of your ideal mixture, which is pretty clever, if I can get it to work. You kind of have to pre-lean it and then hit the lean find, and then it will find the hottest of the cylinders and allow you to set your mixture with relevance to that. I'm just going to turn onto an easterly heading while we wait for that to happen. I can probably pop the fuel pump and the landing lights off, given that was our after takeoff check and I've not done it yet. I think we just give it a minute to sort itself out, and it might come up with a figure for us. It flashes on the cylinder when it's found it. Spin the heading bug around again. There we go. So in all that nonsense, we've actually managed to get the aircraft down to a sensible sort of speed for all of this stuff. The funny thing is, for our general handling, we're probably going to have to throw the mixture full rich. But anyway, I'm going to put the fuel pump on. In fact, I'll keep the mixture where it is for steep turns. It should be okay. I'm going to have a look around. There we go. We'll go to the left first of all. So things that I'm expecting to see for the aircraft in a steep turn. It's a fairly easy aircraft to steep turn, fairly stable. Shouldn't be too difficult for this one. So we're going to go for a 45 degrees angular bank, so that's that dot there, all the way around, maintaining, let's get down to 4,000 feet for starters, maintaining 4,000 feet and rolling back out onto that heading. So roller in, bank balance of back pressure. Reasonable amount of back pressure, but once you've got it, once you've got the attitude set, the trick really is to pick a point on the cowling that the horizon is cutting through and just hold the nose there. And that's at least the trick that I always teach my students to do this particular maneuver with. You never trim into turns, by the way, so try to avoid using your trim, or at least you don't in a light aircraft. You do in airliners. Much heavier on the controls, of course, than your average light aircraft. Trying to keep the nose in that same position with reference to the outside. And we're going to anticipate by about 15 degrees, which is a third of our angular bank. And we'll roll out with a little bit of help from the opposite rudder. And remember to push off that back pressure before we start climbing. So yeah, that seems pretty much spot on for what I expect a steep turn in this aircraft to feel like. It feels very, very good on the controls. It's very realistic in terms of having to add that back pressure in the turn, but also it's nice and stable once you've got it set, once you've got the right sort of back pressure set for it. So yeah, really like that. So that's your steep turn. Let's set up for a stall now, shall we? So height sufficient, airframe is clean, safety and security we don't need to worry about. Engine T's and P's are looking pretty good here. We are going to throw the mixture full rich at this point and put the prop up to max RPM. Location lookout, we're clear of active airfields, built-up areas, controlled airspace, danger zones, and we've not got any other aeroplanes to worry about. So let's go for it, shall we? So I'm going to pull the throttle to idle, pull the carb heat on, and just pitch to maintain altitude. Now our stall speed for clean should be around about 70 miles an hour, so we'll see how we get on with that. Can see just how long it takes for the aircraft to slow down, and like I said, that is accurate as far as I remember anyway. It's a slippy old aeroplane. probably one of the few things about the Comanche that's difficult. I'm going to throw the carpet away now, just to make the recovery more straightforward. Keep pitching, keep pitching, keep pitching. There's the stall warning light coming on there. And there we go, bit of wing drop. Drop the angle of attack a bit, full power. And pitch back to best rate of climb. Yeah, so nice, nice benign stall there with a little bit of wing drop. And I've got a bit of frame drop as well. Let's go with it. I have spun this aeroplane. It will go into a spin if you abuse it hard enough, but it is very easily recoverable, which makes sense with how with the low wing loading of the aircraft and all the rest of it. That's designed to help you out with handling it. So it's not an aircraft which is cleared for spinning, which is why I'm not going to do that as part of the normal demonstration, because as far as A2A are concerned, they really don't need to model accurate spin behavior, because people shouldn't really know what a Comanche spins like, apart from, you know, anecdotal tales of test pilots or people who've actually done it in real life. But suffice to say, it does spin as I would imagine the real aircraft does if you abuse it hard enough. So there you go. I'm going to pull the mixture back again before we get fouled spark plugs. And retrim for 4,000 feet. So yeah, the stall's pretty nice. While we do the next maneuver, or the next item, I'm going to have a crack with the autopilot. So the autopilot on the on this aircraft anyway is pretty basic. The one on the Comanche that I flew was actually quite nice. But as far as this one is concerned, you put the autopilot on by hitting that, let it run through its little bit test, so all those lights will come on there. And we can see that it's ready to go. So I guess we just hit that to put it in a mode. There we go. So now it's just maintaining the current heading, I believe. Oh, we've got a freeze. Yeah, so I think it's just maintaining current heading, and you can use this little thing here to actually move the airplane around. It's a rate-based autopilot, so it's just pulling information from the rate-based instruments to provide it with data. So that's that mode. Heading mode is, as the name suggests, it just chases the heading bug around. Like that. And at the moment, it's not controlling the altitude, so pitch is still under my control, which is why the aircraft's kind of dropping a little bit as it goes into that turn. Now, if we can get it properly trimmed out, then it will show us a green light for altitude holds. Maybe I'll just have to press the button and see if it picks it up. So if I hit alt hold there we go, now we've got the blue light on there. So now it's actually holding our altitude. Now, the autopilot, like I said, is fairly basic. It doesn't actually have a trim function. What it has is a little warning noise and a light which will tell you to trim up or trim down to help the autopilot out. So if it runs out of travel on the yoke, it will start screaming at you for trim indications. So if I put the aircraft out of trim, let's see if it does it. There we go. So it's telling me to trim up now, and it's giving me a beepy noise. So if I add some up trim to help it out, there we go. It trims back out again. I'm just going to turn us off a little bit to the west now. There we go. Should probably do a full Frida check and check that our DI is still aligned. So fuel's sufficient in balance. Radio, yeah, it's fine. DI, so we'll wait till we come out of this turn and we'll align our DI. Altimeters 1013. No change required on those. Okay, so that's giving us 260 degrees. So that's this. It's quite realistic that your DI would be out of whack after steep turns. It's usually the kind of maneuver that throws your gyros out of alignment. Right, so that is that. So the next thing we're going to have a crack at is let's try the emergency gear extension, shall we? going to reduce power some more for this one. Right, try and get the speed down for it. So if we go to flight info and go to emergencies and landing gear extension, so master switch is on, yep, circuit breakers, yep, checked, navigation lights off, so that's a checklist to ensure that, there we go, look, you can see the gear warning horn lights on because I've got the, is that based on speed or what? Interesting. Okay, that's a bit strange. But anyway, indicator lights are checked. Yeah, gear not down locked. Airspeed 100 miles an hour or below. So we've got to get the airspeed to 100 miles an hour below. And then we can use the emergency gear extension handle to crank it down. So we've got to get some quite a lot of speed off here. So let's pull to idle. There's the gear warning horn. So it's asking for some, screaming at me for some up trim there. Okay, we're below 100 knots. I'm going to have to pull the circuit breaker for the gear, I guess. So, landing gear. These two here. I'll leave the indicator lights one, but we'll do the motor. Down trim now. Oof, make your mind up. Right. Okay. So we select the little switch down. But as you can see, nothing's happening because I've pulled the circuit breaker. So, what do you want now? More down trim? Alright. Now, we need this thing. So, we pull it out, and we move it. And now we got some landing gear. It's pretty good. Okay, so that is working. You can see this big telescoping thing. And this is basically, the landing gear on the Comanche is electric rather than hydraulic. So, as opposed to just having to open a valve and move the switch, like you normally have to do. God, this autopilot's needy. Like you do on an aircraft with hydraulic gear, you have to kind of disconnect the landing gear motor and then manually crank them down, and that's what this big lever does here. The reason it extends out like it does is... to add a bit of power, otherwise we're going to stall. The reason it extends out like this is to give you a mechanical advantage and allow you to sort of crank it like that. So, anyway, let's pull this thing back. And we'll pop the motor in like that, and then hopefully our landing gear should retract normally. Like that. There we go. Beautiful. So we'll allow the airplane to start speeding back up again. Shut up, autopilot. Bloody hell. Right. Let's go to Nottingham. So I can see out the window here the water sports centre at Nottingham, so we're quite close. I'm going to take the altitude hold mode out of the aircraft there. I'm going to pull the power back. Still got the carb heat on. Hopefully we've not cooked anything, but it can stay on for the descent. And just pulling the power back and leaving the trim where it is will result in a rate of descent. So we'll pitch and trim it for just under 1,000 feet per minute. That should be perfecto. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to switch the weather around a bit. So let's see what real world weather looks like. So So apparently we've got a wind of 210 at 9 knots, broken at 3,000 feet, QNH 1004. Okay. Cool. So the first thing we'll have to do is reset our altimeters. Now, the reason why I've done that is to show you how the Comanche handles the Microsoft Flight Simulator slightly dodgy turbulence model, which is to say it handles it unbelievably well. So just notice the way the aircraft deals with this. Now we've got 210 degrees the wind's coming from. So the runway in use here at Nottingham is almost certainly going to be runway 21, which is not what I usually demonstrate on these review videos, but I am going to switch things up for the sake of science. We're probably going to have to do a little orbit round here before we get into the ATZ. It's not my fault, it's the plane's fault. It's much too slippy. But it's much better to do little manoeuvres like this than to come streaking into the ATZ far too fast and far too high, so... While it can bruise your ego, at least it's not going to bruise your face. Still letting the autopilot fly for now. And the autopilot will follow nav routes if you want it to. If you put it over into track mode, track low and track high, which is for low and high is for sensitivity of the signal, I think, something like that. So it will be able to track a route for you. It doesn't have an approach mode or anything like that, but you can kind of, as long as you've got a localizer, you can kind of use that mode to give you a non-precision, almost like a 2D approach, almost like approaching in localizer only in VS. Okay, I'm going to disconnect the autopilot now. So something we'd often do at Nottingham is position ourselves over the top of this water sports centre and begin the descent onto the dead side of the airfield from over this thing. So that's kind of what I'm replicating here. Something I've noticed is the distance indication on the GTN is completely broken. It's apparently we're 3,000 miles away from Nottingham, which is not great. What I'd rather have actually is a wind indication. If I can do that, get rid of that because it's broken, and just put wind in. So we're now over the dead side of the airfield here, so I'm going to start descending down to circuit height. Circuit height at Nottingham is 800 feet, but we're on QNH, so we have to add 150 feet airfield elevation to that. Gonna throw the mixture forward at this point. It's a fairly tight circuit for 2-1 because, like I said, it's quite a short runway. So we'll do our best here. Might have to just chop the throttle all the way. Go, just slotting onto base leg now. Trying to keep the speed around 100 knots, which equates to just under 120 miles an hour. And we're trying to stay inside of the village over here to prevent them from giving any nasty noise complaints. It's always tricky flying VFR without those fancy head tracker things that some of you guys have got. Very jealous for anyone who's got one of them. As we're coming around the corner here, we're going to start doing our pre-landing checks. So brakes pressurized, undercarriage, speed below 150 miles an hour, gear select down. Mixture's full rich, mags are on both. Fuel's on sufficient, flaps, speed below 125. We're going to go flaps 1. low now. Feed a bit of power in, bit of low, bit of slow. Trying to put that on runway heading to give me a little bit of situational awareness help here. We'll extend just to the edge of this village here until base. I'm quite tight at the moment, I think. Now the wind's not mega strong at the moment, but you can see that the aeroplane is still nice and stable regardless of conditions. Something I really love about how this aeroplane handles is how the rudder feels. It's really got hands down the best rudder in of any GA light aircraft that I've ever flown in any simulator. So it really feels like you can steer the airplane on the rudder if you need to, keep the wings level with rudder inputs, which is something I try to tell people to do quite a lot. And we're going to go flaps 2 now. Just like the Arrow, the Comanche takes up quite a hefty nose down attitude, and most light aircraft are the same in that sense. When you select flap, and we'll go full flap now. We're looking for about 100 knots approach speed, or 100 miles an hour. I'm going to throw the car piece away. Ready for the touch and go. Disengage the autopilot just in case I catch that switch with my hands. That would be a bit ugly. See, we've got a bit of crosswind from the right. So I'm just crabbing into that. It's so much easier to do to crab and to side slip in this aircraft than it is with others. Reds, blues, and greens. Final check. Just going to pull the power off. It's quite a floaty aeroplane, unlike the Arrow, so chop the power fairly early, especially on a short runway. Remember to kick through, right? Don't go back up, please. I need to touch and go. Okay, ooh, close enough. Full power. And away we go again. Plus to climb gear up. Okay, slightly ropey flying from me. That's just didn't really get the speed off. Coming over the numbers. And ended up ballooning. Now in real life we'd fly a slightly wonky upwind leg to avoid this big house down here. Because he doesn't like aeroplanes despite buying a house right next to an airfield. We're past 500, in fact we're just about levelling off, so let's pull the power of the prop back again. For about sort of 16 inches or so. I'd usually fly about 18 inches in the Arrow, so if I sort of take all the Arrow's power settings and pull them back by a couple inches, it'll probably work out about right for the Comanche. I'm going to try a flapless approach this time, so see how we do with that. Let's do our check. So brakes are pressurized, undercarriage speed below 150, gear select down. Mixtures for rich mags are on both, fuel's on sufficient imbalance, flaps are not going to be used for this approach. Instruments in the green, car heat we do have. We're talking about so used to flying injected aircraft. We're going to put the car heat on, hatches and harnesses secure, and lights. So yeah, after this aircraft, Piper made a fuel injected version called the Comanche 260. They even made a 400 horsepower 8-cylinder version. So if A2A fancy a little bit of a challenge, I would be more than happy to fork out for an expansion pack or whatever that had those aeroplanes in, because that would be really cool. The 260 is really, I think, the ultimate Comanche, everyday Comanche, because it's gets rid of the aircraft's biggest weakness, in my opinion, which is the carburetor. Going to aim to be a little bit lower on base to final this time. Hear the oil canning effect of the airframe as we jog around in this bit of turbulence, which is really cool. Okay, reds, blues and greens. Gonna go a little bit earlier with that. Just gonna stick 5 miles an hour onto my target approach speed, just because we've got no flap this time. See the aircraft's approaching at a much flatter, more nose-high attitude, much less steep rate of descent. And one of the key things with landing at Nottingham on this runway, as is with real life, you kind of have to hop over this line of trees as you're coming in, which is it's awkward at the best of times. Let's get rid of the carb heat. There we go. Come off the power all the way now. And hopefully this is going to be a slightly better landing than the first one. Nowhere near the centre line, but there we go. Cool, flaps already up, full power. And away we go. Happy days. Insufficient runway, touch the brakes, gear up. So, I'm going to try a glide approach next time around. Now, I haven't actually practiced one of these yet in this aeroplane, in the sim, so this could be a barrel of laughs, because I've not done a glide approach in a Comanche in over 10 years. So, wish me luck. Or don't, if you just want to, if you just here to laugh at me. Okay, so we won't have much time to do any of the checks on this one, so we'll start them now. So brakes, undercarriage defer, mixtures, full rich, mags are on both, fuel pump is on, fuel sufficient, flaps defer, instrument screen, carb heat we've got on, hatches and harnesses secure, lights are on, and coming up to the end of the runway now, so we'll start the manoeuvre now. We're going to pitch to best glide and start to turn towards the airfield. Best glide is 100 miles an hour, which is handy because that's also our normal approach speed. That annoying beeping noise you can hear, by the way, is the gear warning horn, because I don't yet have the landing gear down. I'm going to defer the gear to the last possible moment, so I know I can make my runway, and I know I can make my runway, so speed below 150, gear down. And indicating. Speed below 125, flaps 1, flaps 2, all the flaps. Carb heat, reds, blues, greens. A bit of side slip. Okay. I thought we weren't going to make it for a second there. Okay, we're down, and you can see just how good the tyre friction and side loading simulation is. As soon as you touch the ground, you can kind of feel the aircraft start to bite in. All that kind of good stuff. Really good. So as soon as we've touched down, I've pulled the mixture out a little bit to try and keep the spark plugs clean. Set ground idle. And we'll do our after landing checks. So fuel pump, landing lights, strobe, transponder, and flaps all the way up. And I suppose we'll go and park next to this nice friendly marshaller who appears to be trying to get our attention. Okay, brake set. 1200, let's just run the checklist to make sure we've got everything. After landing, yep, all those good. Oh, trim, just make sure we're back neutral on here. Shut down, parking brake set, radios, so avionics master goes off. Take our noise cancelling headset out now. Transponder, yeah, off. Avionics master's off. Master switch, I'm turn the master switch off before everything else. Oh, okay. Master switch off. Throttle closed. Mixture ICO. There we go. Fantastic sound of the shutdown there. Mags are off. Control wheel. We're going to put control lock back on there. Doors and windows. Tie downs. So let's get the door open. And also put ourselves some chocks and a pitot cover and some tie downs. And there we go. One successfully completed flight. Just about. And here we are, ready for the final part of the video, which is of course the conclusion. So what I normally do with this, and this is going to be no exception, is I'm going to bring up my pros and cons, my likes and dislikes of this aircraft in a list, and then come to some kind of conclusion. Of course, leave the ultimate decision up to yourself whether you decide to buy this particular aeroplane. So we'll start with the pros, as we always do. The first pro I've got is the visual acuity, the visual effects, the quality of the visual model of the aircraft. It is really, really good, especially the interior. It's really lovely in here. It's right up there with the best panels and interior models. The wear and the little scratches, it just looks so realistically lived in for an aeroplane, which is of course from the 1950s. And hasn't been produced since, I believe, the 70s or maybe even late 60s. No, 70s. So yes, definitely very, very accurate interior. Exterior, again, is lovely. It comes with a good selection of different colour schemes, liveries. They're all weathered up to make them look more realistic. And you also have all those different visual bits and pieces to stick on the aeroplane to change the configuration. Which is another fantastic bonus as well. And it's not just a visual thing either, like I said, it also changes the performance of the aircraft appropriately as well. So fantastic work with the visual stuff. You can see things like this remove before flight tag is just sort of flapping around in the wind there instead of just being a static item. I mean, huge amounts of care and attention has gone into that. So visually, the aircraft is spot on, really. It's not, I wouldn't say it's the absolute best texture job I've ever seen in the simulator, because I've seen some pretty amazing texture jobs in this sim so far, but it's certainly up there. It's in the top 10%, I'd say. The next positive thing I've got is the sounds, and not just the engine sounds. All the work that's been done on all of the different little sounds of all the different switches and things like the storm windows, and the sound it makes when you taxi, and the sound it makes when you touch down, and the noises of the aircraft as you're being jogged around in turbulence. They're all custom, none of them are default, and enormous amount of care and attention has gone into that, you can tell. So top marks for that. I think the sound is fantastic. It's as good, if not better, than well, I'd say, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say it's better than any other GA aircraft in the simulator. The next thing I'm going to say is one that's very important to most people who are probably watching this channel, because it's important to me, and that is the accuracy of the performance data on the aircraft. It performs to book figures, which is really the least you can expect from a Microsoft Flight Simulator add-on at this point, because most add-ons do. I think at the start of the sim we had a few that came out that were a little bit wonky on the performance side, but certainly things like the Just Flight aircraft, the 414 from FlySimware, the Blackbird 310, and now this aircraft all conform absolutely spot on to all the book figures. It's the least you'd expect from something which positions itself to really be the next step in GA flight simulation. So it's still very important to me though, so it still gets a big old positive in the box for that. The next thing I've got is the flight dynamics and the feel of the aircraft. So this is where I think this aircraft absolutely shines more than anything else in Microsoft Flight Simulator. And I've flown some of the PMDG aeroplanes. I've got the DC-6. I've even flown the 737 a little bit, and not that I know anything about 737s or DC-6s, but they're both fantastic airplanes to hand fly, as is the 414. As are the Just Flight aircraft. In my opinion, this aeroplane surpasses all of them. It is beautiful to fly around, and that can only be because it's got a fully custom, fancy, working in the background flight model that's been developed over this 3-year period since A2A announced that they were making this aeroplane. So I think it's like nothing else in the simulator, and it's worth the price just for that, in my opinion. So, top marks. Absolutely fantastic job. The next thing I've got is the systems accuracy. So, if it's in a command sheet, then it's probably in this simulation. They've got their own aircraft that they use to help develop this model, which deserves part of the credit, I guess, for how accurate it is. So they've set it up with all the instrumentation and stuff that they've got on their own aircraft. Like I said, the Comanche that I flew had a different panel setup, and hopefully at some point A2A is going to maybe bring different panel configurations that we can fit to our aeroplanes. Who knows? I don't know. But as far as the aircraft that's in the simulator here, it is 100% accurate to, I'm sure, the aircraft that they've got in real life. All of the systems work. They all do what they're supposed to do. And there's a load of bonus things on top of that. There's all the maintenance stuff, the reliability stuff, all of the different engine monitoring and things like that. All the things you can do with this tablet here, the maintenance and the weight and balance stuff, and doing the walk around and all that stuff. Just pushing it back with the tow bar. I mean, that's it's such a small thing, but it's fantastic, and it changes the experience from playing around in a flight sim to immersing yourself into owning a light aircraft, which is so good. Like I said, the Blackbird 310 had a go at it and did a reasonably good job, but I think this really takes it to the next level. It is by far the best implementation of that kind of system in any flight sim that I've played, that's for sure. And of course, yeah, it's if you like the word study level, then if this isn't study level, then nothing is. It is that good. Okay, so I've done enough glowing and gushing. I think I'm going to come up with some negatives now, and it's been quite difficult to come up with some negatives because, as you might imagine, I really like this aeroplane, but there are a couple of negatives. Now, the first one seems like I'm kind of contradicting myself, because I'm going to say the visuals maybe could have been a little bit sharper, and also maybe they could have done us some liveries with no weathering on it. I'd see Comanches knocking around, which are gorgeous, glossy, shiny, Hangar Queen type looking aeroplanes, and it might have been nice to include us just one that's in that kind of condition. Maybe if they wanted to go even more extra, when you select the as new condition on the tablet, then it sets your livery to a shiny, polished as new condition. And then if you set the used or the auction quality, then the weathering comes in. So it'd be nice to have a shiny colour scheme, is all I'm saying, really. You might also expect for an aeroplane which is as good as this in every other area to be absolutely the best looking, and I don't think it is. I think I still do think the Coronado airplanes are a little bit sharper in the looks department. There's like that propeller is not amazing. There's a few slightly janky polygons on it, maybe. I mean, the spinner looks gorgeous, and I don't know. I'm being really nitpicky here. I'm really trying very, very hard to play devil's advocate, but I'd say there's a tiny room for improvement out there. In here, yeah, maybe one or two textures could stand to be a tiny bit sharper. But I'm being so pedantic here. Maybe, you know, where the screws are up there is maybe a little bit fuzzy. I don't know. Ooh. Maybe they're out. Look at this. You can even move the vents. Look at that. Whee. And opening and closing these, by the way, affects the internal temperature on your iPad when you're playing the iPad mini game. You've got vents on the side here. Like I said, every single thing moves and works as it should do in here, which is so good. Anyway, back to the negatives. I can only think of one more. It's the price. So it's $49, which you may think is quite a lot of money for a GA light aircraft, and it's up there. It's certainly one of the most expensive, if not the most expensive GA add-on in the sim. But if this isn't worth it, then nothing is, because it has completely changed the game when it comes to not just GA add-ons. I think just add-ons in general. I think that if anybody comes out with a super accurate study level GA aeroplane in the future, and they haven't developed some kind of aerodynamic system along the lines of this aeroplane, then they're always going to be compared negatively to this aircraft. They're always going to come out second best. So we've been horribly spoiled now, because we've been shown just what is possible within the framework of Microsoft Flight Simulator. Instead of developers moaning and complaining that, oh, you can't do X, Y, and Z, they've just kept their heads down, kept their mouths closed. They went radio silent, and they came up with a solution to all of it. So I think that, yes, okay, it is expensive, but I think it's probably worth every penny, which is about as good as a conclusion as I could possibly come to. Of course, the final decision is yours, but I would implore you, if you are interested in light aircraft, if you are interested in complicated study-level aircraft and getting the hang of them, go out and buy this aeroplane. Go out and buy it in droves, because the more people that buy this thing, and the better the A2A do with this aircraft, will show the add-on developers and the flight sim marketplace that there is a big market for super accurate, super high-fidelity GA add-ons, and then we'll get more of them. And the ones that we've got already will step up and try to implement features from this aircraft. I can almost guarantee you that the chap who made the Cessna 414 will be looking very, very closely at this aircraft, because he is really extra when it comes to all sorts of stuff. And that's why that aircraft for a long time has been the best GA aircraft in this simulator. But I think it has now been surpassed. It's still the best GA twin in the simulator. But I think overall, the best GA aircraft in the sim has to go to this. And, you know, you could even rank it as the best airplane in the sim, full stop. I think at this point, it wouldn't be too much of a stretch to say that. I'm obviously biased. I love GA airplanes. It's most of what I fly in flight sim, aside from warbirds, I guess. I don't do much airliners or anything like that, so maybe, you know, I'm missing out on the airliner experience of X, Y, and Z that's really, really good. But for me, yeah, I think there's not much better in this sim right now. But anyway, if you've got another opinion, please put it down in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, like, and even consider subscribing to the channel, because it does help us enormously. We're on our way to 5,000 subscribers now, which is huge, a huge moment for this tiny channel and the three of us who help to run it. So yeah, please consider doing that if you enjoyed the vid, and tune in for next time. Thanks. Bye-bye.